Starting video transmission. Okay, we are totally live. Well, welcome to Tuesday. We are starting off again mid-chapter 34 of the Count of Monte Cristo. If you guys watched the earlier stream, then you'll know that best buds Franz and Albert are at the opera, and Albert's feeling a little lonely, so he's looking around for girls he could check out. And Franz is just playing it cool because Franz has been to Italy before, and he knows how to chill. Anyway, as they're sitting around looking for people to hang out with, Albert catches the eye of the Countess G, and that's what we're going to be working on today. So we've just gone through Albert whining about being lonely, and now he has just seen a beautiful woman from across the room. Thank you very much for hanging out, and if you dig any of this, feel free to subscribe. We're going to try to be streaming 8:30 to 9:30 every morning, Monday through Friday, and we're working on the Count of Monte Cristo. So if you do have any questions when I get to the end of the chapter or I get to the end of the session, I'll reopen the whole thing up for you, and I'll take any questions that you got, or you can email me directly. Otherwise, this is just me recording live, pretending like I have a real audience, and what this does is it just enlivens my performance a little bit better. So thank you for hanging out. And here we go. What we're going to hear is my voice saying, "The quick eye of Albert caught the involuntary start with which his friend beheld the new arrival, and turning to him, he said hastily," and that's where we're going to start. And then turning to him, he said hastily, there we go, and let us begin.
Arrival, and turning to him, he said hastily,
"Do you know the woman who has just entered that box?" "Yes, what do you think of her?" "Oh, she is perfectly lovely. What a complexion, and such magnificent hair. Is she French?" "No, Venetian." "And her name is?" "Countess G." "Ah, I know her by name," exclaimed Albert. "She is said to possess as much wit and cleverness as beauty. I was to have been presented to her when All right. Oh, good. Our lines are good.
Wit and cleverness as beauty.
Okay, we got a little bit of breathing going on, but we're fine. Oops. And as beauty with a breath.
She is said to possess as much wit and cleverness as beauty.
I was to have been presented to her when I met her at Madame Villefort's ball. "Shall I assist you in repairing your negligence?" asked Franz. "My dear fellow, are you really on such good terms with her as to venture to take me to her box?" "Why, I have only had the honor of being in her society and conversing with her 3 or 4 times in my life, but you know that even such an acquaintance as that might warrant my doing what you ask." At that instant, the Countess perceived Franz and graciously waved her hand to him, to which he replied by a respectful inclination. Sometimes you just hit the words, and when you hit the words,
might warrant my doing what you ask.
At that instant, the Countess perceived Franz and graciously waved her hand to him, to which he replied by a respectful inclination of the head. It's almost like I know how to talk. Almost like I know how to talk. Okay, try it again. This time slower.
Might warrant my doing what you ask.
At that instant, the Countess perceived Franz and graciously waved her hand to him, to which he replied by a respectful inclination of the head. "Upon my word," said Albert, "you seem to be on excellent terms with the beautiful Countess." You are mistaking. It's been a lot of pollen outside lately, and I am feeling it from my eyeballs to the tip of my tongue. But we're rocking it. Here we go.
Excellent terms with the beautiful Countess.
"You are mistaken in thinking so," returned Franz calmly. "But you merely fall into the same error which leads so many of our countrymen to commit the most egregious blunders. I mean that of judging the habits and customs of Italy and Spain by our Parisian notions. Believe me, Nothing is more fallacious than to form any estimate of the degree of intimacy you may suppose existing among persons by the familiar terms they seem upon. There is a similarity of feeling at this instant between ourselves and the Countess. Nothing more. Is there, indeed, my good fellow? Pray, tell me, is it sympathy of heart? No, of taste, continued Franz gravely. And in what matter has this congeniality of mind ever been evinced? There's no ever in there. Sometimes you just make up words, and that's okay. You have to cut them, but you can make them up. Here we go.
Continued Franz gravely.
And in what matter has this congeniality of mind been evinced? By the Countess's visiting the Colosseum. We're a little cold this morning. I wonder what happened. We did all the normal warm-up stuff. Here we go.
Has this congeniality of mind been evinced?
By the Countess's visiting the Colosseum, just like we did last night. By moonlight, and nearly alone. You were with her, then? I was. And what did you say to her? Oh, we talked of the illustrious dead of whom that magnificent ruin is a glorious monument. Upon my word, cried Albert, you must have been a very entertaining companion alone, or all but alone, with a beautiful woman in such a place of sentiment as the Colosseum, and yet to find nothing better to talk about than the dead? All I can say is, if I ever get such a chance, the living should be my theme. It was good, but I stumbled over all of it if I ever get a chance.
All I can say is, if I ever get such a chance.
Yeah, nope. There we go.
And yet to find nothing better to talk about than the dead?
All I can say is, if I ever should get such a chance, the living should be my theme. And you will probably find your theme ill-chosen. But, said Albert, breaking in upon his discourse, never mind the past. Let us only remember the present. Are you not going to keep your promise of introducing me to the fair subject of our remarks? Certainly. Directly the curtain falls on the stage. What a confounded long time this first act lasts. I believe on my soul that they never mean to finish it. Oh, yes, they will. Only listen to that charming finale. How exquisitely Coselli sings his part. But what an awkward, inelegant fellow he is. Well, then, what do you say to La Specchia? Did you ever see anything more perfect than her acting? Why, my dear fellow, when one has been accustomed to Malibran and Sontag, such singers as these don't make the same impression on you they perhaps do on others. At least you must admire Moriani's style and execution. I never fancied men of his dark, ponderous appearance, singing with a voice like a woman's. My good friend, said Franz, turning to him, while Albert continued to point his glass at every box in the theater. You seem determined not to approve. You are really too difficult to please. All right, we're going to take a quick little breath, quick little drink. I'm getting some pops on the lips, so it is time for a little bit more lip balm. Here we go. How sexy is that? Okay, here we go. Pop.
You're really too difficult to please.
The curtain at length fell on the performances, to the infinite satisfaction of the Viscount of Morcerf. Satisfaction of the Viscount of de Morcerf. Morcerf.
You're really too difficult to please.
The curtain at length fell on the performances, to the infinite satisfaction of the Viscount of Morcerf, who seized his hat, rapidly passed his fingers through his hair, arranged his cravat and wristbands, and signified to Franz that he was waiting for him to lead the way. Franz, who had mutely interrogated the Countess, and received from her getting into William Shatner territory. I need to back that off and just make it a little bit more natural. Just a little bit more natural. The funny part is animation makes it feel more natural. So you don't want to dead-eye this sucker. Besides, it wasn't written with a dead-eyed voice. So here we go.
He was waiting for him to lead the way.
Franz, who had mutually interrogated the Countess and received from her a gracious smile in token that he would be welcome, sought not to retard the gratification of Albert's eager impatience, but began at once. Okay.
He would be welcome. Sought not to
I didn't like that whole thing. It felt off. So we're just going to start it over again. You know why? Because we can. We're not being paid by the hour. Here we go.
He was waiting for him to lead the way.
Franz, who had mutely interrogated the Countess and received from her a gracious smile in token that he would be welcome, sought not to retard the gratification of Albert's eager impatience, but began at once the tour of the house, closely followed by Albert, who availed himself of the few minutes required to reach the opposite side of the theater, to settle the height and smoothness of his collar, and to arrange the lapels of his coat. This important task is... It says lappets of his coat, but I went with lapels because, again, I can do whatever I want. I can change words. I can change characters. You can't do this in real life. You can only do this in royalty-free manuscripts. Here we go.
Scholar, and to arrange the lapels of his coat.
This important task was just completed as they arrived at the Countess's box. At the knock, the door was immediately opened, and the young man who was seated beside the Countess, in obeisance to the Italian custom, instantly rose and surrendered his place to the strangers, who, in turn, would be expected to retire upon the... We're going a little fast, so we're going to slow you down a little bit.
Who, in turn, would be expected to retire upon the...
Okay.
box.
We're going to start that again. Just make it smoother. We finished on the Countess's box. Doesn't everybody want to finish on the Countess's box? Here we go.
As they arrived at the Countess's box.
At the knock, the door was immediately opened, and the young man who was seated beside the Countess, in obedience to the Italian custom, instantly rose and surrendered his place to the strangers, who, in turn, would be expected to retire upon the arrival of other visitors. Let's see if we've got a good stopping point in there.
Italian custom instantly rose and surrendered his place to the strangers, who in...
Yeah. There's a little breath there, but that's fine. We're getting a little breathy, but we'll go on with it. Here we go.
He rose and surrendered his place to the strangers.
Ooh, God damn it. Nope, it doesn't work. The breath just is too much. So we got to do that all in one big long pass. Got to do that in one smooth pass. Expected to retire upon the arrival of other visitors.
As they arrived at the Countess's box.
At the knock, the door was immediately opened, and the young man who was seated beside the Countess, in obedience to the Italian custom, instantly rose and surrendered his place to the strangers, who, in turn, would be expected to retire upon the arrival of other visitors. Franz presented Albert as one of the most distinguished young men of the day, both as regarded his position in society and extraordinary talents. Nor did he say more than the truth. Okay, that's a little bit too long of a spot, so we're just going to cut that now. There we go.
Extraordinary talents. Nor did he...
So he introduced the Countess to Albert. Okay. Who's a very model of perfection? Albert.
In society and extraordinary talents.
Nor did he say more than the truth, for in Paris and the circle in which the Viscount moved, he was looked upon and cited as a model of perfection. Franz added that his companion, deeply grieved at having been Sometimes this exposition makes you cross-eyed. But here we go. That's the fun part.
He was looked upon and cited as a model of perfection.
Franz added that his companion, deeply grieved at having been prevented the honor of being presented to the Count... Okay, that's fine. Deeply grieved. Oh, yeah. Here we go.
He was looked upon and cited as a model of perfection.
Franz added that his companion, deeply grieved at having been prevented the honor of being presented to the Countess during her sojourn in Paris, was most anxious to make up for it, and had requested him, Franz, to remedy the past misfortune by conducting him to her box, and concluded by asking pardon for his presumption in having taken it upon himself to do so. Ooh, I don't like that last bit.
Him to her box, and concluded
There is a breath there, but I think we can keep the breath.
him to her box.
Okay, good. Starting at box.
Misfortune by conducting him to her box.
And concluded by asking pardon for his presumption in having taken it upon himself to do so. And concluded by asking pardon for his presumption in having get the G in there. And concluded by asking pardon for his presumption in having taken it upon himself to do so. Nailed it. Now we're just going to check that transition because it could be a little ugly, but we just want to make sure.
Conducting him to her box, and concluded by asking pardon for his presumption in having taken it upon himself to do so.
That's great. That's sauce right there. Love it. Quite a bit of mouth noise this morning, though. We'll see how we go.
Having taken it upon himself to do so.
The Countess, in reply, bowed gracefully to Albert and extended her hand with cordial kindness to Franz. Then, inviting Albert to take the vacant seat beside her, she recommended Franz to take the next best, if he wished to view the ballet, and pointed to the one behind her own chair. Albert was soon deeply engrossed in discoursing upon Paris and Parisian matters, speaking to the Countess of the various persons they both knew. They both knew there. Is that a preposition?
In Parisian matters, speaking to...
It's fine.
Upon Paris and Parisian matters.
Speaking to the Countess of the various persons they both knew there. Franz perceived how completely he was in his element, and unwilling to interfere with the pleasure he so evidently felt, took up Albert's glass, and began in his turn to survey the audience. Sitting alone in the front of a box immediately opposite, but situated on the third row, was a woman of exquisite beauty, dressed in a Greek costume, which evidently from the ease and grace with which she wore it, was her national attire. Behind her, but in deep shadow, was the outline of a masculine figure. But the features of this latter personage it was not possible to distinguish. Franz could not... Oh, Franz. There's a deep, dark, disturbing figure looming behind the Greek princess. Who could it be?
The latter personage it was not possible to distinguish.
Franz could not forbear breaking in upon the apparently interesting conversation passing between the Countess and Albert, to inquire of the former if she knew... Franz could not forbear breaking in upon the apparently interesting conversations passing between the Countess and Albert. Could not forbear breaking in to inquire... Okay, there it is. It's got to be on breaking.
The latter personage it was not possible to distinguish.
Franz could not forbear breaking in upon the apparently interesting conversation passing between the Countess and Albert, to inquire of the former if she knew who was the fair Albanian opposite, since beauty such as hers was well worthy of being observed by either sex. Albert's thinking, oh, of course the Countess knows who that is. She's hot, and all hot girls need to be looked at. Here we go.
Of being observed by either sex.
Well, I can tell about her. That's French. You can't do French with an Italian countess. She's the Countess G, Gigliano. All I can tell about her. You know, I'm not even going to give her an ex. All I can tell about her. Yeah, it's just softener. All I can tell about her. All I can tell about her.
Of being observed by either sex.
All I can tell about her, replied the Countess, is that she has been at Rome since the beginning of the season. For I saw her where she now sits the very first night of the season, and since then she has never missed a performance. Sometimes she is accompanied by the person who is with her now, and at others she is merely attended by a black servant. And what do you think of her personal appearance? Oh, I consider her perfectly lovely. Yeah, that's hot. That's good. And we're going to clip that just a little bit, give it a little bit more speed. Speed!
Servant. And what do you think of her personal appearance?
Oh, I consider her perfectly lovely. She is just my idea of what Medora must have been. Franz and the Countess exchanged a smile, and then the latter resumed her conversation with Albert, while Franz returned to his previous survey of the house and company. The curtain rose on the ballet, which was one of those excellent specimens of the Italian school, admirably arranged and put on the stage by Henri, who had established for himself a great reputation throughout Italy for his taste and skill in the choreographic art. One of those masterly productions of grace, method, and elegance. Ooh, nope. My eyes did not scan that sentence very well. Here we go.
For his taste and skill in the choreographic art.
One of those masterly productions of grace, method, and elegance, in which the whole ballet, from the principal dancers to the humblest supernumerary, are all engaged on the stage at the same time. On the same at the stage time. Corpse Day Ballet, where the whole troupe.
Italy for his taste and skill in the choreographic art.
One of those masterly productions of grace, method, and elegance, in which the whole troupe, from the principal dancers to the humblest supernumerary, are all engaged on the stage at the same time, and 150 persons may be seen exhibiting the same attitude, or elevating the same arm or leg with a simultaneous movement. That would lead you to suppose that but one mind, one act of volition, influenced the moving mask. The ballet was called Poliska. However much the ballet might have claimed his attention, Franz was too deeply occupied with the beautiful Greek to take any note of it. While she seemed to experience an almost childlike delight in watching it, her eager, animated looks contrasting strongly with the utter indifference of her companion, who, during the whole time the piece lasted, complex sentences, we're going for complex sentences, yeah.
Of her companion, who, during the whole time in watching it, her eager...
There is that breath. But we're going to pull it back just a little bit and watching it. There we go.
Experience an almost childlike delight in watching it.
Her eager, animated looks contrasting strongly with the utter indifference of her companion, who, during the whole time the piece lasted, never even moved. Not even when the furious crashing din produced by the trumpets, cymbals, and Chinese bells sounded their loudest from the orchestra. Of this he took no heed, but was, as far as appearances? What's an appearance? That would be a portmanteau of experience and appearance, of which you should never put those two together. But that's okay. All right, orchestra.
Chinese bells sounded their loudest from the orchestra.
Of this he took no heed, but was, as far as appearances might be trusted, enjoying soft repose and bright celestial dreams. The ballet at length came to a close, and the curtain fell amid the loud, unanimous plaudits of an enthusiastic and delighted audience. Owing to the very judicious plan of dividing the two acts of opera with a ballet, the pauses between the performances are very short, the singers in the opera having time to repose themselves and change their costume. Change their costume when necessary. That's part of that same sentence.
Performances are very short. The singers...
let's start that again. There's just this big exposition part that I want to be more fluid.
Plaudits of an enthusiastic and delighted audience.
Owing to the very judicious plan of dividing the two acts of the opera with a ballet, the pauses between the performances are very short, the singers in the opera having time to repose themselves and change their costume when necessary, while the dancers are executing their pirouettes and exhibiting their graceful steps. Pirouettes. It's not Pirio. Pirio? Pirouettes. Pirouettes. All right, let's try that whole section again because it didn't have the flow I wanted. Here we go.
Plaudits of an enthusiastic and delighted audience.
Owing to the very judicious plan of dividing the two acts of the opera with a ballet, the pauses between the performances are very short, the singers in the opera having time to repose themselves and change their costume when necessary, while the dancers are executing their pirouettes and exhibiting their graceful steps. That worked. Sometimes you just gotta stop, start over. Ooh. It is only 8:43 right now. I was planning on going to 9:30, but I might run out of water. So here we go again. Here we go.
And exhibiting their graceful steps.
The overture to the second act began, and at the first sound of the leader's bow across his violin, Franz observed the sleeper slowly arise and approach the Greek girl, who turned round to say a few words to him, and then, leaning forward again on the railing of her box, she became as absorbed as before in what was going on. The countenance of the person who had addressed her remained so completely in the shade that, though Franz tried his utmost, he could not distinguish a single feature. The curtain rose, and the attention of Franz was attracted by the actors, and his eyes turned from the box containing the Greek girl and her strange companion to watch the business of the stage. Most of my readers are aware that the second act of Parisina opens with the celebrated and effective duel in which Parisina, while sleeping, betrays Azo to the secret of her love for Ugo. The injured husband goes through all the emotions of jealousy. Ooh.
Her love for Ugo.
Ugo. Let's go, Ugo.
Of her love for Ugo.
The injured husband goes through all the emotions of jealousy until conviction seizes on his mind, and then, in a frenzy of rage and indignation, he awakens his guilty wife to tell her that he knows her guilt and to threaten her with his vengeance. This duet is one of the most beautiful, expressive, and terrible conceptions that has ever emanated from the fruitful pen of Donizetti. Damn. And I love that transition. Okay, so we had a good transition there, but you know what? We know how to do things twice. So here we go. Donizetti.
And to threaten her with his vengeance.
This duet is one of the most beautiful, expressive, and terrible conceptions that has ever emanated from the fruitful pen of Donizetti. Franz now listened to it for the third time, yet its notes, so tenderly expressive and fearfully grand as the wretched husband and wife give vent to their different griefs and passions, thrilled through the soul of Franz with an effect equal to his first emotions upon hearing it. Excited behind. Again, portmanteau. I wanted to say behind, but the word was beyond, and I didn't realize that until later. Here we go. I should call this channel Portmanteau. Everybody's going to be like, what? I don't understand what's going on. Okay. Excited by his usual Nope. Yeah. Beyond.
Equal to his first emotions upon hearing it.
Excited beyond his usual calm demeanor, Franz rose with the audience and was about to join the loud, enthusiastic applause that followed. But suddenly his purpose was arrested. His hands fell by his sides, and the half-uttered bravos expired. And the half-uttered bravos expired on his lips.
But suddenly his
I'm going to turn that down just a skosh. All right, here we go.
enthusiastic applause that followed.
And I lost my space. Go ahead, lose your space, bud. All right, applause that followed.
Enthusiastic applause that followed.
But suddenly his purpose was arrested. His hands fell by his sides, and the half-uttered bravos expired on his lips. The occupant of the box.
Avos expired on his lips.
The occupant of the box in which the Greek girl sat appeared to share the universal admiration that prevailed, for he left his seat to stand up in front, so that, his countenance being fully revealed, Franz had no difficulty in recognizing him as the mysterious inhabitant of Monte Cristo, and the very same person he had encountered the preceding evening in the ruins of the Colosseum, and whose voice and figure had seemed so familiar to him. All doubt of his identity was now at an end. His singular host evidently resided at Rome. The surprise and agitation occasioned by this full confirmation of Franz's former suspicion resided at Rome. Right.
Their host evidently resided at Rome.
The surprise and agitation occasioned by this full confirmation of Franz's former suspicion had no doubt imparted a corresponding expression to his features, for the Countess, after gazing with a puzzled look at his face, burst into a fit of laughter and begged to know what had happened. Begged to know what had happened. Ooh, so close.
Burst into
No, let's do the whole sentence again.
his features. For the Countess. Corresponding expression to his features.
For the Countess, after gazing with a puzzled look at his face, burst into a fit of laughter and begged to know what had happened. Countess, returned Franz, totally unheeding her raillery, I asked you a short time since if you knew any particulars respecting the Albanian lady opposite. I must now beseech you to inform me who and what is her husband. Nay, answered the Countess, I know no more of him than of yourself. Perhaps you never noticed him. What a question, so truly French. Do you not know that we Italians have eyes only for the man we love? True, replied Franz. All I can say is, continued the Countess, taking up the opera glasses and directing it toward the box in question, that the gentleman whose history I am unable to furnish seems to me as though he had just been dug up. He looks more like a corpse permitted by some friendly gravedigger to quit his tomb for a while and revisit this earth of ours than anything human. Ooh. She's a better speaker than that.
Just been dug up.
Yeah, just been dug up. He looks more like a corpse.
He had just been dug up.
He looks more like a corpse, permitted by some friendly gravedigger to quit his tomb for a while and revisit this earth of ours than anything human. He looks more like a corpse than anything human. You know what? I'm just going to do that because I can't fix that sentence. Here we go.
He had just been dug up.
He looks more like a corpse than anything human. How ghastly pale he is. Oh, he is always as color... Here we go. All right. Oh, he's always as colorless as you see him, said Franz.
How ghastly pale he is.
Oh, he is always as colorless as you now... Fuck. Oh, he is always as colorless as you now see him, said Franz. Then you know him? Almost screamed the Countess. Oh, pray do, for heaven's sake, tell us about him.
Oh, almost screamed the Countess.
Almost. Little screaming Mimi she is.
Oh, pray.
Oh, pray do tell us about him.
When? Almost screamed the Countess.
Oh, pray do, for heaven's sake, tell us all about... Is he a vampire? Or a resuscitated corpse, or what? I fancy I'm...
Or a resuscitated corpse, or what?
I fancy I've seen him before, and I think he recognizes me. And I can well understand, said the Countess, shrugging up her beautiful shoulders, as though an involuntary shudder passed through her veins, that those who have once seen that man will never be likely to forget him. The sensation experienced by Franz was evidently not peculiar to himself. Another and wholly uninterested person felt the same unaccountable awe and misgiving. Well, inquired Franz, after the Countess had a second time directed her opera glasses at the box, what do you think of our opposite neighbor? Why, that he is no other than Nosferatu himself in living form. This fresh allusion drew a smile to Franz's countenance, although he could but allow that if anything was likely to induce belief in the existence of vampires, it would be the presence of such a man as the mysterious personage before him. I must positively find out who and what he is, said Franz, rising from his seat. No, no, cried the Countess. You must not leave me. I depend upon you to escort me home. Oh, indeed, I cannot permit you to go. Is it possible, whispered Franz, that you entertain any fear? I'll tell you, answered the Countess. Byron had the most perfect belief in the existence of vampires, and even assured me that he had seen him. It's all right, not too bad. They always change him to something they had seen them.
Byron had the most perfect belief in the existence of vampires, and even assured me.
And we're going back to, I tell you, sometimes in this, the translation is off, and for some reason, him, or them, comes out to him. So there's always these sentences where it's talking about something in the plural, and it says, the boys went to the subject and I could see him. And so you got to wonder, it's probably just a miss-up on the PDF. But, you know, who says what here and now? Take a deep breath, hold it in. Let's get back to the Countess.
That you entertain any fear?
I'll tell you, answered the Countess. Byron had the most perfect belief in the existence of vampires, and even assured me that he had seen them. The description he gave me perfectly corresponds with the features and character of the man before us. Oh, he is the exact personification of what I have been led to expect. The coal black hair, large, bright, glittering eyes, in which a wild, unearthly fire seems burning, the same ghastly paleness. Then observe, too, that the woman with him is altogether unlike all others of her sex. She is a foreigner, a stranger. Nobody knows who she is or where she comes from. No doubt she belongs to the same horrible race he does, and is, like himself, a dealer in magic arts. I entreat of you not to go near him, at least tonight, and if tomorrow your curiosity still continues as great, pursue your researches, if you will. But tonight you neither can nor shall. For that purpose I mean to keep you all to myself. Franz protested he could not defer his pursuit to the following day for many reasons. Listen to me, said the Countess, and do not be so very headstrong. I am going home. I have a party at my house tonight, and therefore cannot possibly remain to the end of the opera. Now, I cannot for one instant believe you so devoid of gallantry as to refuse a lady your escort.
As to refuse a lady your escort.
I'm walking through a ton of fun.
As to refuse a lady your escort.
There was nothing else left for Franz to do but take up his hat, open the door of the box, and offer the Countess his arm. It was quite evident by her manner that her uneasiness was not feigned, and Franz himself could not resist a feeling of superstitious dread, so much the stronger in him as it arose from a variety of corroborative recollections. That's a tongue twister. Corroborative recollections.
Feeling of superstitious dread.
See if we can get it on a second pass. So many R's. Corroborative. Here we go.
Could not resist a feeling of superstitious dread.
So much the stronger in him, as it arose from a variety of corroborative recollections, while the terror of the Countess sprang from an instinctive belief, originally created in her mind by the wild tales she had listened to till she believed them truths. That was good, but I had to burp. Truths. I love that word. Truths. Okay. There we go. All right, truths. There it is.
Tales she had listened to till she believed them truths.
Franz could even feel her arm tremble as he assisted her into the carriage. Upon arriving at her hotel, Franz perceived that she had deceived him when she spoke of expecting company. On the contrary, her own return before the appointed hour seemed greatly to astonish the servants. "Excuse me, my little subterfuge," said the Countess, in reply to her companion's half-reproachful observation on the subject. "But that horrid man made me feel quite uncomfortable, and I longed to be alone, that I might compose my startled mind." Franz started to smile. "Nay," she said, "do not smile. It ill accords with the expression of your countenance, and I'm sure it does not spring from your heart. However, promise me one thing." "What is it?" "Promise me, I say." "I will do anything you desire, except relinquish my determination of finding out who that man is. I've more reasons than you can imagine for desire. It's okay. It's okay. We're rocking it. We're rocking it. We're rocking it. Yeah.
My determination of finding out who that man is.
I have more reasons than you can imagine for desiring to know who he is, from whence he came, and whither he is going. Where he comes from, I am ignorant, but I can readily tell you where he is going to, and that is down below, with the least doubt. Let us only speak of the promise you wished me to make, said Franz. Well then, you must give me your word to return immediately to your hotel, and make no attempt to follow this man tonight. There are certain affinities between the persons we quit and those we meet afterwards. For heaven's sake, do not serve as a conductor between that man and me. Pursue your chase after him tomorrow as eagerly as you please, but never bring him near me, if you would not see me die of terror. Now, good night. Go to your room and try to sleep away all recollections of this evening. For my own part, I am quite sure I shall not be able to close my eyes. So saying, the Countess quitted Franz, leaving him unable to decide whether she were merely amusing herself at his expense, or whether her fears and agitations were genuine. Upon his return to the hotel, Franz found Albert in his dressing gown and slippers, listlessly extended on the sofa, smoking a cigar. "My dear fellow," he cried, springing up, "is it really you? Why, I did not expect to see you before tomorrow." "My dear Albert," replied Franz, "I am glad of this opportunity Nope. I am glad of this. Sometimes words are just a car crash. And that's okay. That is why we have record and clip track. Alrighty, here we go. My dear Albert.
I didn't expect to see you before tomorrow.
My dear Albert, replied Franz, I'm glad of this opportunity to tell you once and forever that you entertain a most erroneous notion concerning Italian women. I should have thought the continual failures you have met with in all your own love affairs might have taught you better by this time. Who's speaking there? Italian women. Who knows more about Italian women than Franz?
And all your own love affairs might have taught you better by this time.
Upon my soul, these women would puzzle the very devil to read them aright. Why, here they give you their hand. They press yours in return. They keep up a whispering conversation, permit you to accompany them home. Why, if a Parisian were to indulge in a quarter of these marks of flattering attention, her reputation would be gone forever. And the very reason why the women of this fine country put so little restraint on their words and actions is because they live so much in public and have really nothing to conceal. Besides, you must have perceived that the Countess was really alarmed. At what? At the sight of that respectable gentleman sitting opposite to us in the same box with that lovely Greek girl? Now, for my part, I met them in the lobby after the conclusion of the piece, and hang me if I can guess where you took your notions of the other world from. I can assure you that this hobgoblin of yours is a deuced fine-looking fellow, admirably dressed. Indeed, I felt quite sure from the cut of his clothes that they are made by a first-rate Paris tailor, probably Blin or Human. He was rather too pale. Certainly. He was rather too pale, certainly.
Probably Blin or Human.
He was rather too pale, certainly, but then you know paleness is always looked upon as a strong proof of aristocratic descent and distinguished breeding. Franz smiled, for he well remembered that Albert particularly prided himself on the entire absence of color in his own complexion. Well, that tends to confirm my own ideas, said Franz, that the Countess's suspicions were destitute alike of sense and reason. Did he speak in your hearing, and did you catch any of his words? I did, but they were uttered in Romaic dialect. I knew that from the mixture of Greek words. I don't know whether I ever told you that when I was at college I was rather strong in Greek. He spoke the Romaic language, did he? I think so. That settles it, murmured Franz. 'Tis he, past all doubt. What do you say? Nothing, but tell me, what were you thinking about when I came in? Oh, I was arranging a little surprise for you. Indeed, of what nature? Why, you know it is quite impossible to procure a carriage. Certainly, and I also know that we have done all that human means afforded to endeavor to get one. Now, then, in this difficulty, a bright idea... Ooh! We got a little creak because I put too much weight on my desk. And it's starting to get a little warm and humid in here, but we are at 9:06. We are cooking along. How much time do we have this chapter? We've got quite a bit of this chapter to go. That's okay. Now then, in this difficulty, a bright idea is flashed across my brain. Here we go.
And all that human means afforded to endeavor to get one.
Now then, in this difficulty, a bright idea has flashed across my brain. Franz looked at Albert as though he had not much confidence in the suggestions of his imagination. I tell you what, Mr. Franz. I tell you what, Mr. Franz, cried Albert. I was like, I tell you what, Mr. Franz, cried Albert. It's always... Okay, here we go.
The suggestions of his imagination.
I tell you what, Mr. Franz, cried Albert. You deserve to be called out for such a misgiving and incredulous glance as that you were pleased to bestow on me just now. And I promise to give you the satisfaction of a gentleman if your scheme turns out as ingenious as you assert. Well then, listen to me. I listen. You agree, do you not, that obtaining a carriage is out of the question? I do. Neither can we procure horses.
Out of the question. I do.
Neither can we procure horses. True, we have offered any sum but have failed. Well now, what do you say to a cart? I dare say such a thing might be had. Very possibly. And a pair of oxen. As easily found as the cart. Then you see, my good fellow, with a cart and a couple of oxen, our business can be managed. Sometimes you take in a little bit too much air and you feel like you got a burp, so you just stop. And that's okay, because you can start up right again. And we are running low on water, so let's see how we do.
Couple of oxen, our business can be managed.
This cart must be tastefully ornamented, and if you and I dress ourselves as Neapolitan reapers, we may get up a striking tableau, after the manner of that splendid picture by Leopold Robert. It would add greatly to the effect if the Countess would join us in the costume of a peasant from Puzzoli or Sorrento. Our group, then, would be quite complete, more especially as the Countess is quite beautiful enough to represent a Madonna. Ooh, so close.
Our group.
Our group, then. Here we go.
From Puzzoli or Sorrento.
Our group would then be quite complete, more especially as the Countess is quite beautiful enough to represent a Madonna. Well, said Franz, this time, Mr. Albert, I am bound to give you credit for having hit upon a most capital idea. And quite a national one, too, replied Albert with gratified pride. A mere mask borrowed from our own festivities. Ye Romans, you thought to make us happy, unhappy strangers trot at the heels of your processions like so many paparazzi, because no carriages or horses are to be had in your beggarly city. But you don't know us. When we can't have one thing, we invent another. And have you communicated your triumphant idea to anybody? Only to our hosts. Upon my return home, I sent for him, and I then explained to him that what I would... Only to our host.
Anybody.
Make that a little quicker.
Triumphant idea to anybody.
Only to our host. Upon my return home, I sent for him, and then explained to him what I wished to procure. He assured me that nothing would be easier than to furnish... Oh, suck it. Nothing would be easier than to furnish. All right, we are getting very, very close to the evening hour. We've been at this for how long now? 53 minutes. Okay, so we've been at this for 53 minutes. We've got about 5 more minutes to go, and then it is time to call it a day. Can we finish this? Oof, it just keeps going and keeps going. All right, so what we're going to do is end on a little piece of dialogue, which we will continue tomorrow morning. And with this, so we required 3 days, so you see we must do this quickly. We're just going to say quickly. And superfluidity. There it is. With a little superfluity. Okay, here we go. Yeah, we're starting to get punchy. We're running out of water. We're getting a little dry in the throat. We need to do a little bit more warm-ups and get ready for our normal recording day. So let's finish this chapter. And we are at He Assured Me.
And then explain to him what I wish to procure.
He assured me that nothing would be easier than to furnish all I desired. One thing I was sorry for. When I bade him have the horns of the oxen gilded, he told me there would not be time, as it would require 3 days. He wants to gild the oxen's horn. What a jackass.
To furnish all I desired. One thing I Nothing would be easier than to furnish all I desired.
One thing I was sorry for, when I bade him have the horns of the oxen be gilded, he told me there would not be time, as it would require 3 days to do that. So, you see, we must do this with little superfluity. Superfluity. I like superfluity. Superfluidity is kind of
3
cool.
days to do that.
Superfluity. Superfluity. Let's try not to hit the plosive.
As it would require 3 days to do that.
So, you see, we must do this with a little superfluity. And where is he now? Who? Our host. Gone out in search of our equipage. By tomorrow it might be too late. Then he will be able to give us an answer tonight. Ooh, I see a spike there.
Who? Little superfluity.
We are going to end today's practice at superfluity. That is a good place to end today. And looks like we got 25 minutes cut in just shy of an hour, which is not too terribly bad. You always got to keep track of those things. Checking the chat. Doesn't look like anybody was here today, and that's fine because I'm just doing this for fun. And we are going to go ahead and end stream for the day. So y'all have a wonderful Tuesday.